All right, welcome back to another episode of the Cameo podcast. I am lucky to once again have Brendan Shaw jump on board to sponsor this next episode. So, this episode is brought to you by the Realtors of Brendan Shaw Real Estate. Call 778-471-1498 to speak to the residential and commercial real estate experts in Kamloops, or visit brendanshaw.com for contact info. He's been a huge supporter of the podcast since the beginning. In fact, he actually responded to one of my tweets when I started to try and monetize the podcast through Patreon. And he's like, hey, what about sponsorship opportunities? So I'm very excited to have him back a second time around. And my guest today is Cathy McLeod, our MP, who just got back from a tour promoting the pipeline in rural areas. So explain what that is again for the listeners, what you were doing and what the message that you're trying to leave with these communities is.
So I'm not as necessarily trying to leave a message with these communities. What I'm trying to do is share the message from these communities with the broader public that really don't understand that perspective. We hear lots about the perspective of Burnaby and Vancouver, but less about both the perspective of the interior and what the opportunities are. So what I did was I started at mile 0 in Edmonton and finished in Burnaby. And along the route, I talked to the mayors, the councillors, some of the, through Jasper National Park, the park wardens, the people that are doing conservation work around the salmon, the ranchers, and it goes on, who were telling the positive stories, who were saying, we would really prefer that oil be in pipelines rather than along the rail line, talking about the benefits to their community. So what I'm hoping to do is we're going to be putting this together in a little bit of a video and to get that message out that, first of all, there are people out there that are worried about what's happening in Alberta, and second of all, not everyone in British Columbia is opposed. In fact, every single municipality throughout the interior has actually supported and signed on to benefit agreements.
Yeah, the pipeline initiative is a little bit more complicated than just like yes and no, having all the communities jump aboard because of the indigenous component of it all. Are you bringing that messaging out in your tour?
Absolutely. So I met with Chief Labourge, and Chief Labourge, not only do they have community benefit agreements, they want to buy an equity partnership. They see the pipeline as an opportunity for their communities in terms of helping rise them out of some of the difficult financial situations they're in. We have First Nations entrepreneurs along the pipeline route who are actually terribly disappointed that when it came to a halt, because they saw they were going to be part of the building process, they were going to be part of the security process, they were going to be part of the replanting process. So certainly, again, what you hear from maybe the mainstream media is First Nations that are opposed. But what you're not hearing is from the people that really, again, they also see benefits. So absolutely, First Nations partnerships, the First Nations perspective is absolutely critical, but they also have many positive stories to tell.
To balance it out, were you talking to like the hereditary or the elected chiefs?
Well, certainly that is an issue in the north. It is less of an issue in terms of the pipeline route that we're involved with. So,
okay.
Yeah, so I think many people are familiar with the issue up in the northern British Columbia, but where there's a strong hereditary chief component. So certainly along the route, it was the elected bands and councils are the ones that have signed the benefit agreements.
And so I saw you talking, I think you're by the SPCA build. Is that where you are, the video?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so you were talking with Bryce Herman. Just recap that conversation, and let's talk about how the pipeline can benefit Kamloops and what challenges Kamloops is currently seeing because of this.
Well, I think what Bryce was saying, and I actually was unaware, is as the pipeline was going to get twinned through Kamloops, there, of course, was going to be a need for a major project to sort of rehabilitate the area where it went through. And there was a plan for $22 million in terms of a beautification of the whole North Shore area, the corridor through to the airport. So he was saying from a North Shore Business Improvement Association perspective, they were ready for shovels in the ground. They were ready for this, really beautiful new look to the Kamloops North Shore, and were very, very disappointed when it came to a halt. So
where was this $22 million coming from?
So this was through, it was part of the rehabilitation after the pipeline went through.
So Trans Mountain would be dropping $22 million? Because I only knew about like the $700,000 that was going into like helping fix the North Shore roads.
Yeah, so this was Bryce, and you could get the details certainly from Bryce, but he said there was a $22 million initiative. And certainly the Kamloops itself would have a benefit agreement where they would be getting dollars through. But, the message I heard most importantly was pipelines protect fish. So if you look, someone described the Thompson River as the Audubon of the salmon fisheries. We've had wildfires. You look at the landslides last year. You have some of the most treacherous tracks in the country, and you have increasing rail by car. And so people were really feeling that they needed to, the pipeline was a safer route than having tanker by rail. So that was certainly a message.
The bitumen shipments or whatever they're called.
Well, if you look at what's going through Kamloops every day, there's 25 coming down the CN tracks, trains per day, and another group coming down the CP rail. So they said, listen, first of all, pipelines are more efficient, they're more environmentally friendly, they're better for the fish. I mean, obviously you never want a train derailment, but a train derailment of grain is certainly less of an impact than a train derailment of something like bitumen. So that was a message I heard loud and clear. Valemount, this was a really interesting story. There is a naturalist, an environmentalist up there who has dedicated his life to the salmon fishery. And in partnership with Kinder Morgan, he got $5,000. He turned it into $700,000. And if you ever drive through Valemount, especially in August, pop off at the tourist station, go down to there's this little spot where you can overlook the Chinook, and it's right above the pipeline, and they've rehabilitated all the habitat, and so they've created beautiful new habitat for the fish. And he is just incredibly supportive, again, of the pipeline, the partnership, the work that they've done around rehabilitation, and again, looking at the train, something like a derailment. Last week, we had one tanker go into the river and it shut down the water system for a week. So I think that was a message that I heard loud and clear. The other interesting thing I heard from forestry companies, from dairy farmers, the more capacity of the rail that is being used by the oil tank cars, the less they have their ability to get their product to market. So there's a real bottleneck because it's been increasing the tanker traffic or tanker cars. And so now our forestry, our mining, our dairy farmers, our wheat growers are saying, we can't get our product to the Pacific Ocean in the way that we need to.
Oh, that's an interesting, because I'm obsessed with the idea of distribution networks. Most people don't understand. In the media world, it's not actually about content, it's about the distribution of content. And the railway is a perfect example. There's so much space on the railways. There's so much space on the radio waves or whatever it be, right? You can't pack another train on if it's full. So what do you think is like the biggest downfall if this doesn't go through for Kamloops and region? Like, what can we kind of expect? Is it really like that big of a issue if it doesn't happen?
So I think for Kamloops, obviously we won't have the community impact agreements that have good financial benefit. I think it helps the tax base. It helps, the average Kamloops person to decrease their taxes. So I think certainly the loss of the community benefit agreement is something of concern. But I think we need to be, and of course the increasing concern about the protection of our riverways, I think is another issue for Kamloops. But more importantly, we're part of a larger We're part of Canada, and part of Canada needs to mean caring about the very difficult situation in Alberta. It means caring about, I think we all want to go to a lower carbon footprint. There's no question, but I think the idea that we can do it today or tomorrow, I think we're going to be looking at phasing out towards a lower carbon footprint. In the meanwhile, why should Canada be losing, I think they estimate $80 million a day because we can't get market value for our oils? And that impacts everyone across this country, whether it's equalization payments to Quebec, whether it's jobs and opportunity. There's in Salmon Arm, or Vernon, there was a business, and it had ramped up, and it was ready to supply products to the oil sand. So there is business opportunities throughout the country. It's not just on the pipeline route.
Well, to continue on that vein, don't you think there's other industries that might be better suited for additional government support than buying into a pipeline?
We never agreed with our party never agreed with buying the pipeline. We had a number of private companies that were willing to do get a pipeline to market, and certainly Northern Gateway, the current government immediately canceled. Eagle Spirit, it's a group of First Nations who really wanted to get to create an energy corridor, and the tanker moratorium destroyed their opportunities. Energy East, there was an over-regulation, so all of a sudden Energy East walked from, Energy East actually made some sense to me because, of course, you'd be getting the oil to refining capacity in New Brunswick.
So we're at a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation right now.
So we're at, the Trans Mountain is the only thing that they have left. And of course, then they went and bought it. And what happened when they bought it is the company took that $4.5 billion of taxpayers' dollars and is now investing that money down in the United States.
Great. I love money going to the States. My wife doesn't understand that my apprehension for sending my money to the States. I bought she wanted a fancy baby bag thing, and so I bought from Lizzie Baby Bits. After asking, hey, I'm looking for a bag like this, and she's like, oh, I have this. I'm like, sure, and I sent her the money, and she ended up actually calling me directly saying, hey, first of all, the post office strike, I don't think you'll get it by Christmas, and second of all, I don't think you're gonna be happy with this bag. You should cancel this order. Yeah. And that's what you get when you stay local. I ended up having to buy from the States and paying bloody fucking duty and shit, but it is what it is. What do you think of the rumors of Terry Lake might be running for the Liberal Party?
I'm certainly waiting to hear from both the Liberals and the NDP who their candidate is in 2019. Of course, the election's coming, but I have to focus in terms of my re-election, and hopefully I've done a good job for the citizens of Kamloops, and that we're going to present a good vision in terms of what we're going to do to make life easier for people in Kamloops and throughout the riding, and so of course that's the democratic process, and I welcome it.
Yeah. So I think it was Bill Sundu that ran against you last time, and is that it? Was there a little?
No, there was Steve Poirier, and then there was a Green Party candidate also.
Okay. Yeah. So we haven't heard about most anyone, as far as I'm aware. But it sounds like we got an October election. I think that's what
that's the date that is the legislated date. Obviously, the Prime Minister can always do as he desires in terms of when he's going to call it. But right now, it's October 21st.
Awesome. What's your favorite part about Kamloops? What do you get excited to share when you're in Ottawa and you want to brag about Kamloops?
First of all, I got to. Right now, the weather, oh my goodness, Kamloops is
beautiful. I'm loving it.
And then I have to go back to Ottawa on Thursday, and it's minus 30 degrees, and it's just
shout out Ottawa.
It's oh my gosh.
So, Megan Barretta, I hope you're listening to this. She's my friend in politics. She's wicked smart.
Yeah.
I love Ottawa.
You know what? We have everything here. We have the perfect size city. We have, our lakes, our mountains, our, kayaking, our fishing. I could go on and on. We are the perfect size city. We're big enough that we can enjoy the arts. We can have decent shopping, and we're small enough that we don't go crazy with traffic. But you know what? This is a riding that's even bigger than just Kamloops. We go up past Blue River. We go just below 150 Mile House, Westwold, Savannah, Pritchard, and I look at my colleagues who live in a Toronto riding, and they can maybe walk around their riding and knock on doors in a couple of hours. And I look at this beautiful, beautiful place that we live, and every community is so unique with their own sort of character and qualities. And so I just spent the last few days on a rural tour, and it was a real treat to meet the new mayors and councils, to meet some of the community members and hear what their priorities are.
How do you think Kamloops can support arts and culture in a grassroots way? Chatting with someone yesterday, they called me a libertarian. I'm like, okay, sure. Because I believe in arts and culture. I believe I can create a digital economy, which is low cost, basically create a digital pipeline, which is distribution, versus, the Performing Arts Center, which, got shut down with a referendum, but now it's back, right? So I'm trying to figure this all weird stuff out. How do you think Kamloops can support arts and culture in a grassroots way? As someone who wants to, not pay more taxes because, I'm already not paying my student loans. So
you know what was interesting, because I was at this event this weekend and heard the mayor speaking, and what he
shout out Mayor's Gallery of the Arts.
Yeah. He talked about needing to not focus in on just a performing arts center, but really look at the arts in a wholesome way. So I would expect that the city's got to do a lot of thinking about how they're going to approach the next couple of years and what the vision is going to be. Often that's not as much as a federal government responsibility as it really is locally driven. The federal government comes in sometimes in terms of making life easier for people like you, that we don't put a lot of regulatory burdens
Yeah,
in
don't let the CRTC do this stupid shit that I've been reading about. Yeah. And CBC doesn't need more money. Fuck, give me some of that.
Yeah, so I think that's where the federal government steps in, is let's let these people that are innovative and creative and who want to try new things, let's not drive them crazy with regulations.
That's why I consider myself the liberal media, not in the sense of liberal politically, but liberal in the sense of I'm free from the traditional, which if you Google it or, God forbid, use a dictionary, that's what the definition of liberal means. You're free from what is traditional, which I think needs to be embraced in this day and age. What's something we haven't had the chance to chat about? We're 17 minutes in. We can chat as long as my battery holds up.
So I think we talked a little bit about the Trans Mountain Pipeline tour. I'm going back to Ottawa now. We head back on Thursday as I indicated, to the freezing cold. And what's kind of interesting in Ottawa that people might not be aware of is that iconic center block. When you think of Canada's Parliament, you think of that Peace Tower and the big clock and the flag, and it's closing down for the next 10 years for renovations.
Really?
Yeah. So if you haven't been touring in Ottawa in the Parliament buildings, you got to wait 10 years to see that beautiful building.
Parliament, it's closed down already, or is there a closing date that's coming up?
No, when we go back, we're going to be in a new House of Commons.
Oh.
So there's a building right beside what we know as Centre Block. It's still part of the parliamentary precinct, but it's going to be the temporary home of Parliament for the next 10 years.
Well, I'm lucky that I've got the chance to visit them.
You betcha, yeah. So I've certainly in the last few months, I've had a number of people from this area who've arrived in Ottawa, and I said, isn't it great? You're going to have a chance to see, because there's so much history, and the building truly is beautiful. And so it was a real treat to tour the residents of, Kamloops around. And so certainly, if anyone ever comes to Ottawa, they always talk to me later and say, oh, I was in Ottawa. I said, give me a call. Let me know you're here. We'll make sure if I'm available, I'd love to walk you around Parliament.
I want to get one of those press passes one day.
Well, it's better than a press pass. I can go places the press can't.
Yeah, I was, 2016, my wife and I went to the island, my first time going to the island, and getting to Victoria. It blows my mind that Vancouver is not the capital city, but hey, Victoria is beautiful, and it was really neat. I can't believe, I realized I was an adult when I started to enjoy those tours.
Yeah.
I remember going, getting dragged to school to all these events or whatever, being how can I get in trouble? What's gonna piss off the teacher this time? But where can people reach out to you if they have any questions? What's your preferred way of communication? Because I know I speak in random weird ways online, so.
Obviously the traditional, pick up the phone, 250-851-4991. Email is always the traditional. I try to respond when people go direct message on Facebook, but sometimes that can get overwhelming. So if you really want to make sure that your interaction, that when you reach out, that we know you've reached out, email and phone are still the best. But as I say, lots of people will direct message on Facebook, or they'll put something on my Twitter feed, and I do try to respond, but sometimes it's pretty impossible.
Yeah, you're still located by the old Four Cat studio downtown, right? Is that?
Yeah, we're in the Seymour,
where the old Kamloops florist.
Yeah,
location, who's now moved over by the bus station. Anyways.
Yeah, we're right in the square there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for meeting with me, Cathy. I appreciate it. And, feel free to leave your last piece, your goodbyes, if you'd like.
Great. Well, certainly it's been a pleasure to join your podcasts, and I do want to congratulate you on trying something new and innovative in terms of creating some content for Kamloops that hopefully will just grow and provide you with an opportunity.
Well, I'm thankful for having the resources in this town to do this sort of thing. It wouldn't work if it was Vancouver or other places. There's certain things about Kamloops just work. And thank you, audience, community. I know that's what I named you guys, for listening in. If you're new, please consider subscribing. An iTunes review helps. Be sure to check out all the interviews I've released recently. I just chatted with Tom Gimbel of Foreigner yesterday. Released Dina McLeod of Oxygen Yoga Fitness. I got a mermaid coming up. I have Apple Dagger Art. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there that could use a listener too. Feel free to reach out to all of them on Instagram or myself. Anyways, cheers. I'm going to end it there. Bye.